Hi again, graphic novel lovers. Diana here, talking to you about our final excursion into the wonderful world of memoir. In case you don't know, an abecedary is someone who works with the alphabet or an alphabet. We open with a quote from Lily Tomlin. All my life I've wanted to be someone. I can see now I should have been more specific. Quite on point for something as intimate as the memoir, I think. Now, this week we're going to talk about types of memoir and stylistic approaches to the memoir. Now, we note in this that classification is a means to an end, not an end in itself. As in life, the desired end is understanding the questions as we aspire to beginning to understand the answers. There are several basic types of memoir: the survivor, the confessional, the coming of age, the second coming of age, and travel are the most common classifications. Now, we've previously discussed related topics, reportage, and the historical document as memoir, or as graphic novel, rather. Excuse me for the misspeak. Now, there are several structures to look at: the thread, the single slice of life, the quilt, and the transparency. So you can overlay any of these structures on any of the types. So you have types, structures, types, structures. Everybody got that? Good. Moving on. The first type of memoir to consider is the survivor memoir. These are stories of endurance. The most common themes are war, injury or illness, mental illness, emotional trauma. These can deal with things like a death in the family. The most best known graphic novels in this area are David B's Epileptic, Mom's Cancer, Our Cancer Year, and Pedro and Me, Judd Winnick's document of meeting and sharing life with a young gay man who has AIDS. Fascinating book. The confessional reveals a formerly kept secret that has an impact on the author's life. Now, this impact is catalytic. As Robert McKee notes, that this is an absolute and irrevocable value change. After this particular confession, which is accompanied by a realization, nothing in the narrator's life can be the same. Nothing in the subject's life can be the same. It is something that once you realize it about yourself, you're quite literally a different person. Examples of the confessional graphic memoir include Alison Bechdel's works, Fun Home and Are You My Mother?, Craig Thompson's Blankets, Howard Cruz's Stuck Rubber Baby, Ted Nafa and Tristan Crane's How Loathsome, fascinating documentary of transgendered life, and David Wojnarowicz's 7 Miles a Second, an unrelentingly powerful work that we almost use as a text this time, but it's just too much. This is a panel from it. This is the point at which Wojnarowicz, a successful tag artist and a gallery celebrity following his life as a child hustler, is trying to deal with his HIV status. 7 miles a second, in case you don't know, is escape velocity from the earth. That's how fast he thought he'd have to run to get away from the pain of his life. The coming of age story deals with the transition into adulthood. This is also called a Bildungsroman. This is one of those big words that intellectuals like to throw around. Now you know what it means and you can throw it right back at them. As is the case in the confessional, there's usually a catalytic event that frames the story, the moment at which you are no longer a child, the moment at which you become aware of some aspect of childhood that's been abandoned. The Wonder Years, Stand By Me are fictional models. A science fictional model would be Darth Vader's revelation to Luke Skywalker at the end of Empire Strikes Back. Graphic memoirs in this model include Neil Gaiman's Mr. Punch, Stitches, Why I Killed Peter, and the not-quite memoir Tale of One Bad Rat, a document of parental abuse by Brian Talbot, whose Alice in Sunderland we'll be looking at next week. The second coming of age, these are stories of adults finding new meaning in life as they look back. In some cases, a rejuvenation, in others, an increased awareness of one's capacities and limitations and their changes over the years. And you suddenly realize, hey, I really did learn something when I wasn't looking. Graphic memoir examples of this include Harvey Picar's The Quitter, Craig Thompson's Blankets, which could also work as Bildungsroman, and Von Bodie's Schizophrenia. document a confession, him standing on the moon in full drag, about his predilections towards bondage, transgender life, and drug use, and suicide, and how he came to terms with all that. I'm a big fan of Bodhi's work. Not everybody shares this particular fascination, but quite worthwhile in my mind if you can find it. The travel memoir, usually in first person, usually chronicles unique aspects of one or more journeys. If it's just a bunch of stuff that happens, there's not much point. There has to be a pivotal aspect to it. As in the Bildungsroman, it centers on this catalytic event. Graphic memoirs of travel include Craig Thompson's Carnet de Voyage, less successful than some in my mind, Lucy Kinsley's French Milk, and Joe Sacco's Safe Area Garage Day, which could also be seen as working as a travel, or as an historical or war document. There's a panel from it to make the point. The pause button is at your disposal if you wish to read it. Structures. One of the less common structures is the thread. This is where you leap around in your life, focusing only on stories related to a common theme. There are aspects of this in Howard Cruz's Stuck Rubber Baby and in Mouse. The best graphic memoir examples, Freddie Mercury and Me, and Ellen Forney's I Love Led Zeppelin. At the surface, they're just collections of short bits, or in Forney's case, short stories. But when you read them all at once, you get a larger sense. It's a case of the whole being larger than the sum of the parts, the thread that connects them all. The single slice of life structure. This is a work that focuses on a one-time period or event, often related directly to coming-of-age stories. These stories often focus on seemingly mundane aspects of daily life whose importance is only clear to the narrator until they're shared in that context with the reader. Examples of this in graphic memoir would include Neil Gaiman's Violent Cases and Chester Brown's Paying for It, a document of his sexual preference for prostitutes. I don't think it's a particularly good book, but I do think it's very well done. That's an arbitrary distinction. Will Eisner's Last Day in Vietnam also fits into this category in some ways. The quilt is a more elusive concept. This is a collection of solitary stories that create a larger image of their subject. They're usually by the same creator, but they can be a themed anthology involving multiple creators. Anthologies of Harvey Picar's American Splendor fit this definition, as does the biographical comic anthology series Spark Generators and the Juicy Mother series documenting the first meetings of gay lovers, as told by gay comic artists. The transparencies are an elaborate structure that imposes two or more stories on one another, much like the thread, often covering multiple periods of time to create a larger effect. The classic example is Mouse, which deals in several plastic devices, the animal as visual shorthand for character type, the interweaving of timelines, the father trying to come to terms with his past in the concentration camp as the son tries to come to terms with the father. Maus also deals in a concept known as reflexivity, which is an artwork's awareness of itself being that artwork. Here we see Spiegelman directly addressing the audience about the work. And all you art history mavens will remember Magritte's seminal work, Ce n'est pas une pipe, which is very much on point with this aspect. Now, your mission for this week, should you decide to accept it, is to consider ways in which the work you've chosen to read for this week fits into this admittedly loose structure. What type is it? What structure does it use? Is there more than one answer? Does your work fall outside this? If so, how do you categorize it? Remember, these are graphic memoirs. What is the role of the art? How does the art reinforce or work against the story? Again, I want specifics on this, people. Cite page numbers. Point to specific panels. Give me something concrete that I can work with. And apply the same concepts to the Eisner work, which is still significant but secondary at this point. We'll do some compare and contrast, although this is largely about your chosen work for this week. First responses are due by 11:59 p.m. on Wednesday, November 6th. All responses submitted by 11:59 p.m. or by the time I close it, if that's later, on Sunday, November 10th, will be accepted for grading. That's all for now. Thank you for your time and attention, and we will see you on the boards.